Welcome to Be a Voice. This is Britt Carpenter on USALA Radio. Thanks for tuning in today. I'm excited about today's show because I am now able to sit here and turn the tables and interview one of my colleagues here at USALA and friends. I'm here with Drew Murray. Good morning, Drew.
All right. Thanks for having me, Britt. Thanks for having me on the show.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for braving this monsoon we're having out there to come in for it this morning.
No, I don't know. I got numerous tornado warnings this morning. It was crazy.
My phone was going off.
It was going off like nuts.
Like crazy. And then they were all expired within minutes.
Yeah.
So, but the rain is torrential. I mean, everybody's like, oh my gosh, we're getting a storm. I think people tend to forget that we're in August. This is storm season.
Yes.
Rains are very common.
Well, it seems
August.
like nothing with everything else going on. It's
we're
having a tornado. No big deal. COVID-19 and.
Well, it's funny. It's almost like, allergies. I thought with COVID-19, they were going to postpone allergies for the year,
Yeah.
But that didn't happen. So we're stuck with storms, and, waking up today was a little bit harder. And today I'm actually, I'm actually day one, Drew, of this brand new cleanse that I am doing, a cold pressed juice cleanse by Squeezed. And I'm not advertising for them. I'm not doing anything for them. I'm just trying it. And I'm thinking to myself, what did I get myself into?
And is Squeeze a brand?
Squeezed is a brand.
So you just keep drinking those, Squeeze.
Well, it's actually pretty cool because what they do is they send you, based upon what you want. If you want 3 days, 5 days, whatever, they send you that amount per day. And then the bottles are labeled 1 through 5. And it's 1, 3, and 5 are your breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then the other 2 are a snack. And then they have this other one. It's a cashew milk or something for if you're doing anything that requires energy. Well,
okay.
After drinking these, I'm not sure I'm going to have the energy. But, we're going to try it today. We're going to try it and, see if it gives me anything extra for this interview.
But the COVID-19 is, everyone's put on the COVID-19, they say. I've gained a ton of weight. I will not get on the scale.
No?
I refuse.
Well, me, on the other hand, I've actually lost since February 29th. I've lost 17 pounds.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah. Well, because I run a dog walking and pet sitting company, and when this hit, all my employees except for one quit.
Wow.
I didn't let any of them go. I didn't tell them, there was no work because we had work. I mean, we were essential. Mm-hmm. We have people that are doctors and nurses and healthcare, everything, essential workers. And so I was out there since the beginning of this 7 days a week walking. I was averaging about 8 or 9 miles.
Wow.
Now that this new phase went into effect, are we even green phase? What are we in?
We're in a modified green.
Modified
still.
Green.
Yes.
All right.
Well, by Pennsylvania, we're in green.
We're in green.
But the mayor says, no, we're in a modified green.
Pennsylvania's all in green. Philly is still in a holding pattern.
By the mayor.
By
Correct.
the mayor.
Yes.
What a great guy.
Yes.
Sorry. Did I just laugh after that? I apologize.
That's okay. I'm a proud St. Joe's Prep graduate, but I cannot say I'm real happy with our mayor right now. I think it's easier to lead when everything's great. The economy's great, there's development everywhere, there's this. When there are no hard decisions to make, it's not that hard to be a leader. When there are hard decisions to be made and you make no decisions whatsoever, basically, that is the sign of poor leadership, in my opinion.
Well, and it's funny because, for umpteen years, 17 years, I worked corporate America. And I worked my way up from $10 an hour in corporate America to, the big salary and the checks and the headaches and the lot of drinking and all that other stuff that goes with it. And I was always told that you don't need to be good at everything that you're managing. You need to get good managers underneath you to manage those processes. So when I look at the mayor and I look at the fact that how can I say this without, that he's sucking wind so badly, it goes to show me that has he really developed and formed the right team underneath him or brought the right leadership in?
Well, it's interesting. I like Brian Abernathy. So now, did he do a good job? Again, it's a lot easier to be a good leader when things are going great. Did he do a good job under COVID-19, under all the protests? I didn't think it was a horrible job. I didn't think it was a horrible enough job that he should get fired, and that's another big problem I have with the mayor. The buck stops with you. Mm-hmm. You don't fire people underneath you because of decisions that you basically made. I mean, he made Brian Abernathy the fall guy, and in my opinion, and he's made police officers the fall guys, the fall gals. I mean, he made decisions. Maybe they were wrong decisions, but the bottom line is there were decisions he made that now he is just like, well, that wasn't me. That was everyone else. Well, no, you're the mayor, so it is you.
It's you. You are the voice of this city.
Mm-hmm.
You are the face of this city. You need to take responsibility for those actions. And he has failed on numerous occasions over the last few months, or the last few years, actually. And it's a shame. I want to put my faith into those who lead us all the time, regardless of what our individual beliefs are, or regardless of how I feel personally towards somebody. Because if my personal feelings got into play and each time I wanted to formulate how I feel about the job somebody's doing, I'm in trouble.
Sure.
But like when I look at him, I look at the fact that like you do have some good people there that are underneath you. You need to develop them. You need to bring that goodness further out of them. Abernathy, did you ever see the movie The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas?
It's been a long time, but yes.
Okay. Charles During, is that right? Do you remember? He played the senator or the governor,
Mm-hmm.
And he did this little song that he did in the movie that said, I like to dance a little sidestep. I'm here and gone. And he talks about like how that's the way he did it, like smoke and mirrors. And that's how he was in politics. And, it's almost the same that I feel about Abernathy. Like he was trying his best to do it, but he was dancing the sidestep each time, trying to clean up the messes of other people. But also, I don't think he was really prepared for some of the things. I'm going back to like when the encampments were over here in Kensington, and we would have those weekly or monthly meetings for the same thing each time, like update. The updates are the same thing each time.
Same thing.
And I threw a question out to him that I was really hoping I was going to get an answer, and it was really directed towards him about Liz Hirsch and the Office of Homeless Services. And he skirted that issue and turned it into an answer that had nothing to do with the question and moved on. And this was actually on video, and you can see my face going, okay, thank you. Like, there wasn't an answer. So to me, when I think about that, I think to the fact that, like, number one, if you're ill-prepared for the job, get preparation, get yourself, the training you need, get yourself the knowledge you need, get yourself the support you need. He didn't have it.
Sure. Well, and Abernathy, I think most people don't realize how important the managing director's job is. You are truly the mayor's right-hand man in this case. And maybe Michael DeBernardinis, maybe we, honestly, looking back, we saw what a good job I think he did do. I mean, maybe he kind of ran the city in many ways, because Michael's he's a strong figure if you've ever met him. And again, times where it was a totally different time. We didn't have the protests, we didn't have COVID-19, so it was an easier time to manage. But I feel like the mayor sometimes needs to slap in the face and say, what are you thinking? Number one, make a decision. That's my number one gripe about the mayor. He doesn't make a decision. You brought up the encampments. Well, we have an encampment in my neighborhood now at 22nd and the Parkway. And the mayor just doesn't make decisions on it. Look, I get it's not an easy situation, but we're on day like almost 60. And the encampment is illegal. The mayor does have the power to end it, but he's saying, I'm not going to do anything. And in fact, Brian Abernathy did send a deadline and said, this is the date that we're going to end this.
Friday.
It was a Friday. The decision was made, and then he basically said, Brian, you're fired. Come September, you're stepping down. And I am getting rid of this date. And I know the mayor has met with the community leaders in Logan Square. I'm no longer the president of Logan Square, but I kind of get almost a daily update. But he did meet with the leaders, and it was amazing. Just what you said. What's the update? Well, it's the same thing. It's the update. And then I have neighbors and friends who are emailing the mayor, emailing Brian Abernathy, and they're saying, well, Logan Square Neighborhood Association has been kept in the loop this whole time. If they're not communicating to you, that's not our fault. And my response was, communication is not telling us the same thing every other day, that we're in negotiation, we're doing this. There's no steps going forward. And you mentioned Liz Hirsch. I actually like Liz Hirsch, but I think this is another situation that is tough, that she's not handling it. She's not handling it well. Conversations with people in our neighborhood were like, is this really a big deal? You use the word privilege in our neighborhood, which we are a neighborhood that is better off.
It's a little more affluent than others. Some of them, absolutely.
I think people think we're all rich. I wish I was rich, because I know I am not rich.
I think people will use that term so loosely today. I think people have to realize that I don't think people are rich. People live to the means that they can.
Sure. Oh,
Let's just say that.
Unfortunately,
and above and beyond
yeah,
sometimes. So.
my wife and I sometimes look at him like above and beyond. We just remortgaged our house and kind of consolidate debt, and it's a great time to remortgage your household. But it was maybe we were living a little bit above the means. But
Right.
when you run a campaign, actually, sometimes you have to go above and beyond your own means because it is so hard to raise money. But yeah, it's so the encampment that was just. That you said basically the same exact thing, that they're not making decisions, and the update is there is no update.
There is no update. It's the same thing. We're going to review this, and we're going to get back to you. And I know some of the leaders, community leaders, who are spearheading the, for the transition of the encampment. I mean, that are stepping up for it. One of them is our colleagues here at the station, of course.
Sure.
Steph.
Yep.
And she had talked to me, and I, because of my work that I do with those who are most vulnerable and those with the homeless community and everything like that. Like, do I believe that they need a place to go? I believe that they fail on so many levels. The mayor needs to step up and say, hey, we have X amount of empty school buildings. Let's turn them into shelter.
Sure. No,
Let's turn them into housing.
There needs to be something done.
Right.
I don't know if I have the answer right off the bat, and I know Stephanie is working very hard. And look, I disagree with Stephanie on this issue, but I think and I don't know her that well, but I know her heart is in the right spot. I know that without a doubt. I know she's a good person. I've heard a lot of great things about her. I've only met her once or twice. And even though we do disagree on the issue, I think her heart is in the right spot. And we both want the same goal. We want these people helped, but it's not going to happen overnight. No. And some people don't want the help, and 70's leading the charge on the little homes, the little houses, which I think can be a great thing for some of the people in the encampment. But for those under the cycle of addiction, putting them in a small house without any treatment might not be the best solution. If people have mental health issues, putting them alone in a little house might not be the best solution. Again, I am not an expert on this topic. If it's a second chance for people who just are under hard times, and I always say we're all one bad decision away from being homeless.
Absolutely.
Then absolutely those little homes would be a great option. Here's your second chance, whether it's 6 months, a year, you live in these homes and get yourself back on your feet. But that doesn't solve all of the problems, probably for the vast majority of the people in that encampment who do have mental health issues, who do have drug addiction issues. I don't, and maybe you know better than I don't think putting someone with a drug addiction in a house is all by themselves, not in a treatment center. So let me say that. I would think that's not a good thing, but an expert on this, I am not. So,
there's a right way and a wrong way to do things, of course, and anybody who suffers with substance use disorder, and needs treatment, there's a right way to get treatment. The city sometimes fails to do this too, because they do provide housing. When the tracks were turned over there on Gurney Street and the encampments were down in Kensington, and they were putting people into housing, they were setting them up on different programs, whether it was a methadone program or something along that line, in order to help with that. But the problem is, and this is where I love the fact that you and I can always sit down and have a conversation, because we agree on a lot. I understand your viewpoint, you understand mine. I'm an advocate for those who are experiencing homelessness. I am an advocacy for those who are most vulnerable out here on the streets. I think what the problem is, and where it fails, isn't the fact of getting them into a tiny home or getting them into housing. It's seeing it through. It's the transitional skills that are needed once that happens. Who's working with them now that they're in a home to say, hey, this is what we need to do to get you to that next level.
Sure.
This is what we need to do to get you on a path to getting into a job. This is what we need to do to get you to a path to becoming the person that you want to become. And you can't just put somebody into a quarters and say, good luck to you.
No, absolutely not. And that's a very Republican way to think about it. It's, we're going to give you a second chance, but you need to have some culpability, and we need to help you with that. You can't just put someone who is under the cycle of addiction into a home and say, okay, you're good. As you said, there's a process. We need to help these people break that cycle of addiction. But there also needs to be a level of culpability. We want them to break the cycle of addiction. We want them to get better. We want them to then get a job, then be able to get a home on their own, and continue the process until they are self-sustaining on their own. And they, maybe I guess if you're an addict, I guess you probably always need a level of help. But get yourself on your feet so you're able to support yourself, and if you have a family, to support your family. I think most people all people, I would say, because sometimes Republicans get a bad rap, and sometimes we deserve a bad rap. But it's about giving people second chances, and it's about getting them back on their feet so they can support themselves. Now, if you have a mental health issue, you might not be able to ever get to that point. So,
and that's where we have to have professionals come in and assess all this and be able to work with it. And before we move on, I want to ask you a question. Since that is your neighborhood, and Logan is your neighborhood. That field, the Van Coln Field, is that a city-owned field?
Yeah, it's part of Fairmount Park.
It is. So that is a Fairmount Park?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. And I wanted to know. I had no idea. You don't know anymore. Sometimes, like, these neighborhoods have their own little owned lots and stuff.
You're right. A community development corporation could own it by itself. But no, everything on the parkway is part of Fairmount Park. And not just Parks and Recreation, truly the original Fairmount Park.
Conservatory that we have.
Yeah.
And I think it might be really important for my listeners. I mean, I know who you are, and a lot of other people do. And we've talked, for a few minutes here, and we talked a lot of politics. And you mentioned that you are a Republican, which, that's awesome that you're proud Republican.
Sure.
And it's funny because I don't ever think about you as Drew Murray, the Republican. I think about you as just Drew Murray.
Sure.
Because that's who you are.
No, well, hey, I pick my friends based on friends, not on politics.
Yeah. So tell the listeners, who is Drew Murray, and what does Republican have to do with anything that we're talking about?
Sure. So I live in the Logan Square area, like we talked about. I've always been involved in the community. I've been a board member of the Logan Square Neighborhood Association for over 10 years. I was president for 4 of those years. I'm the president of a friends group. We talk about parks. I'm the president of the Friends of Cox Park.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm very involved in parks. I'm vice chair of what's called the Crosstown Coalition, which is a coalition of civic groups. So I've always been involved in the community. And honestly, for most of my adult life, I was a Democrat. Up until about 2 years ago, I was a Democrat. And a couple years ago, a lot of people kept saying, Drew, you've been a community leader in Logan Square. You should run for office. And it was always in the back of my mind. So last year, I ran for city council. And it's funny, when people were asking me to run, they assumed I was a Democrat. They didn't know that. Even though I might have been registered a Democrat, I was a Democrat, like a lot of Democrats, I think, are in Philadelphia. I'm a Democrat still, where I was, because I wanted to vote in elections and actually have a voice in those elections, where in Philadelphia, sometimes you don't get to vote basically 5 out of 7 of the city council at large people, because they're voted in basically in the primary. So I stayed as a Democrat, even though I voted mostly Republican. So I was truly a Democrat in name only. I mean, I was voting completely Republican. So I ran for city council last year. Unfortunately, I lost. It was a tough race. There was 8 of us in the city council at large, Republican side, and 5 people get through to the general. And I was like, just by the numbers, I'm like, I should have a very good chance. And I never realized how important ballot position was until I saw the results of that election. I mean, there was 8 of us, then there were only 7. One person dropped out, so I was like, oh, wow, only 2 of us aren't making it. The 2 people with the 6 and 7 ballot position are the ones who didn't make it. And it was a huge jump from 5 to 6.
Was that you and Duke?
No, so Duke ran. He ran for a district against Mark Squilla.
Okay, that's right. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. You were at large. He was district.
It was a woman, Irina Goldstein, who came in 7th. Yeah, she came in just a little bit behind me. Our numbers were very, very similar. David O, actually, interestingly enough, came in 5th. He ended up winning. He was the only Republican who won. But there was a pretty big jump from David to myself.
Really?
And so people just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So that ballot position you're saying up there, that's a very important thing, that people just should not play that A game.
Absolutely.
When you're doing a test, they should really look at the names and look to see the candidate, because they might be, number one, hurting themselves and other people.
Sure. And I think it's a lot of times people don't know, if you go back 10 years, I mean, even I felt like I'm involved and I know things. There you go into the ballot booth and you don't know a lot of the names. I mean, judges, how often do people know who judges are? And even myself now. I mean, who knows even the difference between the Superior Court judge and Commonwealth judge and things like that. So for judges, I'll be honest, I only vote for judges who I know. And that's not that many. It's not like I know 30 judges. But friends of mine who are running, or people I've met or have gotten to know, then that's who I'll vote for. But it's tough to know everyone in the ballot and when you walk into the ballot booth.
I gotta be honest with you. You know, like I go in there and I'm like I know in my head the names and all of a sudden I look at other names. I'm like, where the hell did that name come from?
You didn't even know it was
Who was that? You know, and I think that's a shame in itself because I believe that we should be able to hear the voices of every candidate.
Sure.
And we should be able to know that. And I believe that you know we as citizens of Philadelphia, we should probably be doing our due diligence a little bit better. And I really think maybe the city of Philadelphia owes us a little bit more due diligence too
Sure.
on the candidates that are out there. I
Absolutely.
mean, let's go back to city council. What's the term limit for city council here in Philadelphia?
No term limits whatsoever.
Which freaking amazes me. That just blows my mind that we are one of the largest cities in our country. And we have 0 term limit for our city council people. And some of them have been in there for 20 years. 20 years, and they're running unopposed each year. So it's almost just like, hey, I don't have to do anything.
Yes.
It's just like, roll me over.
Now, well, people will say on the flip side, like play devil's advocate, there are term limits and there are elections. But I
Damn
understand.
politician playing devil's advocate.
Yes, damn bastard. No, and you know, Councilman O'Neill has been in the Northeast for 40 years, but I'll tell you what, people love him. I mean, people think he does a great job, and he was challenged this year on the Democratic side, and he won, not easily, but relatively easily. You know, Council President Clark, who I think Council President Clark does do a good job. He's been there for at least 20 years.
And that's really a 50-50.
Yeah, they're a love-hate relationship with Council President Clark.
Yeah.
You know, he's always, I can only speak in terms of Logan Square Neighborhood Association. He's always been there for us. And we don't need as much as some of the underserved. He serves some underserved, you know, challenging communities. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I always say I only call Council President Clark, you know, when I was president, when I really, really needed him. Because he's got bigger fish to fry. There are other issues. You know, we are very lucky at Logan Square. I'm not going to deny it. And you know, I would only call him when I really, really there was a big problem. I think I said I called him twice on his cell phone when I was president. So.
And you know, I think there's a lot of people who feel that way about him as well. I mean, he does do his job where he does show up when he needs to show up, and he needs to be there before other people. I will tell you, I see him at, you know, because I do a lot of work with victim services. I go out, and not a lot, but I go out when there's, you know, happenings just to make sure things are good. And you know, he's there. He's there when there's an issue, when there's a tragedy or something happening.
And
you know,
and in our neighborhood, it does revolve more around zoning. I mean, we need him for zoning issues because we're in Center City. You know, we have everything from an RSA 5 townhome to the Comcast Center. It's both Comcast centers in our neighborhood.
That's right, because that extends right to where Comcast stops. Logan stops right there.
We're broad and market. So you know, we have a lot of you know, we have an interesting, you know, diverse zoning issues that go on with our neighbor, and he's always there for us, and that is our number one, and that's a good number one concern to have. We don't have much crime, although it is absolutely increasing exponentially in the last definitely in the last 6 months and over the last couple of years. I guess the last thing I didn't say is now I am running for state rep.
I was going to ask you, so what's on your plate now?
Yeah, so now I'm running for state rep in the 182nd.
So you went from city council, running for city council, and now you are running for the 182nd district for state rep.
Yes. So, which is mostly Center City and a little bit of South Philly.
How'd that come about? What made you
I'll
say
tell you,
this is what I want to do?
I had no intention of doing it, Britt. It was I lost the primary, and if you've ever run for office, when you lose, it is devastating, and it's a ton of time to run. It costs a lot of money, both raising money and in my case, I did spend a decent chunk of my own money. And you know, the summer came, and I was like, I'm gonna relax. I had every intention of getting back into the city council race again in 4 years. And some ward leaders came to me and said, "Look, we want you to run against Brian Sims, who is the current state rep." And the first time I said, "I'm like, there's no way I'm running for another race." I'm like, this is literally a race that is then going to start almost immediately. It's going to start in 4 months, and I just wasn't ready for it. It's a lot of work, it takes a lot of money. So I said, there's no way I'm doing it. And it's a district, you know, I'm a Republican. This is a district that's 8-1 Democrat to Republican. So it's also a district that is probably impossible to win as a Republican. So I said, there's no way I'm doing it. And then the second time they asked me, I said, no, there's no way. And then the third time they brought in some people from the state, from the House Republican Campaign Committee. And I had an honest conversation with them. I said, look, what are my chances of winning? They said 0. I said, okay, I'll do it. I said, if that's, you know, if you're expecting something, then I'm not gonna. If they lied to me and said no, we think you can win, then I wouldn't have done it. And I said, I'm like, I need help raising money because I just ran for office. So it's tough to go back to the same people and say, I just ran for office. Can you give me more money? Especially when those people were mostly Democrats. I'd say 80 to 90% of the people who donated to me were Democrats.
Really?
Because in city council, you're not really running against other Democrats, right?
Right.
There are theoretically two non-Democratic positions in city council at large. Normally went to Republicans. Didn't happen this time. So there's a sixth Democrat in city council now. Basically, Kendra Brooks with the Working Families Party, which is basically the wing of the Democratic Party, but that's a completely different issue. But that could be a whole nother show.
The minute you said the name, I just
Yeah, it's so that's
my
another
lip,
issue.
yeah.
We can go over that too as well. But
I want to go back to the whole Brian Sims is what I want to go back to.
So yeah, I said yes. I'm gonna need help raising money because a lot of people aren't going to who are not going to give to a Republican, even if they don't like the current Democrat in office, because it is public information. If you give anything above $25, your name's going to be out there.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of committee people gave me money. A lot of ward leaders gave me, some ward leaders in the Democratic side gave me money, and family and friends who aren't necessarily willing to be publicly on financial reports by giving money to me. So it's going to be it's even harder. And now with COVID-19, it's almost impossible to raise money. So
I bet. And here you are running against. I'm going to use.
You're pausing for a long time.
I need to really weigh my choice of words here, just because But you're really running against somebody who, for the longest time, was considered to be Philly's favorite.
Oh, he was when he beat Babette. I mean, everyone loved him. He was new. We talked about term limits. Babette had been in for a long time, and a lot of people thought it was time for a change. And Brian came in. He was the first gay man elected to Pennsylvania's legislature, so he was an advocate, a great advocate for the LGBT community. He still, in many ways, is a good advocate for the LGBT community. But there are many people in the LGBT community that I've spoken to who have said,
he's not our voice.
They're not. He's not our voice.
Right.
And that's both Democrats and Republicans, because there are LGBT members who are Republicans, and people think that sounds crazy, but there are.
There's a lot of LGBTQ community members who are Republican. I really think that people need to really, really assess what they're thinking and what they're judging based upon the classification or group you're putting somebody in.
Sure. Oh yeah. I've never understood why LGBT is a partisan issue. I mean, I never understood what someone's sexual identity has what to do with politics. Republican and Democrat to me is Republicans big government, small taxes, Democrats bigger government, higher taxes.
Right.
And that doesn't always work that way, but that's what I see. It has nothing to do with a lot of the identity politics that you see out there. And you're right. I have a lot of LGBT friends who are either purely Republican or they think in a Republican mindset, but because they live in the city of Philadelphia, they remain Democrat, or because they're in the LGBT community and they're expected to be Democrats.
Do you think that a lot of people don't admit or show their Republican idealisms or support because they're afraid of what others are going to say?
Oh, absolutely. And especially, look, we have a figure in the White House now. He's challenging.
That's a good word.
He's challenging, and I don't agree with a lot of what President Trump says. I disagree with probably most of what he actually says on Twitter. I agree with some of his policies, but he's a polarizing figure, and I don't think, and a lot of people say the president's a racist. I don't think he's a racist. I think he's a narcissist, and I think he thinks he's better than everyone. But I think he has emboldened racists in the last 3 years, and that's just as bad. I mean, if you see racism just coming out, not people walking down the street and they don't seem to hide it like they used to. It's like, oh, I could be a racist now because they think the president's a racist. I don't think the president's a racist, but I don't think he's come down hard enough on people who do follow him who are racist.
It's funny you say that. I think you're right. People are very much more vocal nowadays than they used to be about their beliefs, and I believe it's because they feel that they have this support from the higher up, from the top of our country. And it's interesting to hear that
Yeah.
take on it. So thanks for that.
Yeah. Now, I have a friend who he lives in my neighborhood. Went to the prep. He said, "I have not been called the worst word in the world, the N word, in years." He said, "Since the president, it's happened like 3 or 4 times on the street." Like, he said, "That's the problem with the president." And it's horrible that people think they could ever use that word, let alone in public, and think
scary.
it's okay. It is scary. I mean, and he said years. He said 20 years before, since I've been called that, and it's been happened. And this was actually a couple years ago. So it was like, since he's been president, it's happened 3 or 4 times to me.
That's really scary.
Yeah.
That's really scary. That shouldn't happen to anybody, regardless who's president or
Absolutely.
what's going on. That nobody should be, called the word of stigma or of hate, based upon that, which really disgusts me. But so we're talking about Brian Sims before, and I've got to be honest, and I've said it to you before, and I'll say it. I'm not quite sure what's happening with him right now.
Sure.
I'm not sure what's going on, but he's been on a lot of rants. He's been on a lot of weird rants on social media. However, I've got to say, I also have seen, and you're not on a rant, you've been on a very much, I don't want to use the word deliberate, but course of, you go after those rants and you bring them to light, and you're not attacking the person, you're attacking the issue, which I like about you. I have actually forwarded many of your posts to people who are supporters of him, because I've been thinking your posts have made me think differently about some things. So what's going on there, Drew?
Look, he's had a few issues. The most recent was a rant that he had done when it was found out that Republicans had tested positive for COVID-19 and didn't tell anyone, which was absolutely wrong. Brian was right in being upset. Any of the Democrats should have been upset that they did that. But his rant, I mean, it was like 20 minutes long. It was a little strange. And anyone who knows Brian, and I do know Brian, and Brian and I, we actually get along pretty well, and we've never had issues. But if you looked at the rant, it went overboard. And if you know Brian, it was also acting. It was completely acting. Like he's tapping. Is this on? Like someone's filming for him, obviously, in his office, and he's acting like he's in his office alone. He's sweating like crazy. I think he ran around his office like 40 times, because Brian's in pretty good shape. He's not going to be sweating by sitting there yelling at anybody. So I think he ran around his office to get sweaty.
See, and that's what I mean when I saw that and I saw the sweat, and it leads me to believe some other things might be going on too. But
no, it was strange, but to some of his base, and this is what's funny. I call Brian, he can be a bully. He's almost like the president, but as a Democrat. And I've heard other people use that. There was look, I don't care. The first really big thing that Brian does was outside of Planned Parenthood, and I am pro-life, but I don't think this was a pro-life issue. There were young girls, teenage girls, praying outside with their mother. Outside of Planned Parenthood, they were pro-life people, and Brian went up, and what Brian does oftentimes, he'll turn the camera on himself and say, "This is Representative Brian Sims." So he was not an individual. This was not just a citizen. Although when you're an elected officer, you're always in that elected office. So, but
in the public eye,
but you're always in the public eye, and he yelled at these girls for practicing their First
Yelled.
Amendment right.
He berated them
and tried to dox them. And I remember this is the first time I ever heard that term. I'm like, what does doxing mean? This was a couple years ago. I'm like, I don't even know what doxing means. He went and said, anyone who doxes these girls, whoever puts their name publicly on social media, I will donate $100 to Planned Parenthood, or he may have even said, I will give you $100. These are teenage girls. It was dangerous, because there are some crazy people out there who would have done it, and then once that public information went out, could have done something scary. I'll be honest with you. I thought Brian should have been removed from the legislature that moment.
I was shocked. I was shocked at that. I mean, what was that? 2 years?
It's about 2 years ago. Mm-hmm.
I was really shocked at that. That happened. I remember the day. It was nice. The video went viral. It was a nice day. It was the girls, their mother, and he just full on went like balls to the wall at them and was not letting up. And the scary thing to me was, what I heard and what I saw coming out of him wasn't acting at that point.
No, he was angry. And
that was anger. And
there's many problems with it. Again, this was the first pro-life, pro-choice. It's a difficult issue, and I don't think people who are pro-choice are evil, and I would hope that they don't think I'm evil because I'm pro-life. It's a challenging issue, and I don't vilify anyone on either side. But he went after their First Amendment right of freedom of speech. He doxed them, and that's just it's completely unacceptable. And Brian, I think, also needs to realize. I think a lot of politicians need to realize there were people who differ in your opinion, but they're still your constituents. They are still your constituents.
Oh yeah.
And just because someone disagrees with you does not mean that they are a bad person. And the thing is, you still represent those people. Now, if someone's a racist, okay, then that's a different issue. But just because someone has a different opinion than you doesn't mean they're a bad person. And I don't think a lot of politicians, and specifically Brian in this instance, remembers that.
I think, you're right. I always say that as long as you don't do anything that's going to be hateful or harmful to another person or animal, we're cool.
Yeah.
We're cool. I don't care what you believe in. I don't care if I'm pro-choice. I don't care that you're pro-life.
Sure.
Guess what? I didn't flinch about it. I didn't think in my head, oh, damn him. What a weirdo. What, oh, that guy, how could he not? Who's that for me to say?
Sure.
Who am I? That makes me no better than the person out there then that's damning me for being pro-choice.
Sure.
So, and that's what I like about you, Drew. You are you're very open to everybody and their ideas and beliefs, and you bring them in. How does that work maybe for you and what you're doing here?
Well, I think, because I used to be a Democrat and now I am a Republican, I am very much a moderate. And I think I have the ability to see both sides of issues. And in office, I think it will also be beneficial to the city of Philadelphia, because right now, Brian is very much unliked in the legislature, especially by Republicans and by a lot of Democrats as well. Not as if you're a Republican, it's like automatic. You don't like Brian. Well, it's a Republican-controlled legislature, so it's tough to work across the aisle when you just constantly yell at people. You gotta see both sides of the story. And as a moderate, I think a lot of times the answer is in the middle. A lot of times the answer is compromise. And you can't compromise with people when you're constantly yelling at them and not listening to them. And, you got to understand why people think the way they do. I say when it comes to the goals of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and I'll speak specifically to Philadelphia, everybody wants a good education for their children, a safe neighborhood, and a good job.
Right.
And they're all, those three things are kind of connected. And there's other issues, but I think that umbrella takes care of most of the issues of what people think are important in the city of Philadelphia. Both Republicans and Democrats want those three things. How do you get to those things is just how we differ. So let's just figure out how we get there.
Right.
And if things haven't worked well in the past, if it was a Democratic policy, then let's change it. If it was a Republican policy, let's change it. And let's maybe think. And look, we have a poverty level of 25% in this city, which is the highest amongst all the large cities in the country. Maybe
Say it again for our listeners.
25% level of poverty.
Crazy.
And it's the highest of any large city in the country. Maybe we're not doing some things right. Maybe we should think out of the box and maybe think of things that would maybe fall on the Republican side. It's we all know the definition of insanity, and we keep putting the same people back in office who are not solving some of the biggest problems that we have in the city. And look, there are a lot of good things happening in the city. I'm going to go back to about this time last year, because right now there are a lot of bad things going on. But jobs were increasing to a degree. Center City's great. We're getting more businesses coming. We're getting a lot of tourists. But we can't forget about that 25% poverty level. We can't forget about Kensington. And I don't know if you listened to the show a couple weeks ago. I had my friend Mark on. I've been to Kensington, walked through Kensington. I never walked for a mile in Kensington. I walked for a mile from the North Kensington CDC to K&A, and it opened my eyes. I thought I knew what was going on in Kensington. I didn't.
Well, it's really funny that you said this. This was actually in my mind waiting to ask you, because a few weeks ago on a Wednesday evening, there was the town hall held at K&A, where they are talking about the residents are fed up, they want things cleaned up and everything. And I was over there at K&A, and I turned around and I saw you on up at Esperanza, and I got to be honest, because you had texted me then too and said, hey, and the reason I didn't say anything is because I think I might have been more taken back or shocked. I'm like, what the heck is Drew doing here? What were you doing there?
A friend of mine, Mark McFellin, who was on my show a few weeks ago, we had met. He's a Republican. He had tried to run as a write-in candidate for the first senatorial district, which is hard to begin with, but with write-in ballots being legal now in the state of Pennsylvania with Act 77, and because of COVID, so many people actually doing it, it was almost impossible for him to do it. But he said, he lives in Kensington. He said, will you come up here? He said, our politicians are not doing anything. He's like, and you're not a politician here, but, Kensington's a problem for everyone in the city of Philadelphia, not just the city council person from that district, not just the state rep from that district, not just from the senatorial Larry Farnese is a senatorial rep for that district. It's not just a problem for the people who represent that district. It's a problem for everyone because it is so bad. And so he had me come up. There was people from Vice actually filming for a show.
Yes.
And he said, come up. We're meeting at the North Kensington CDC, where that's about a mile from K&A. And we met there. It was about 99 degrees that day. So it
on the
was
corner of
super
Somerset
hot.
Ruth.
And we walked north, and I was amazed at what I saw. I said, people aren't they're just ignoring Kensington. They're not forgetting Kensington because everyone knows it's what's going on there to a degree. They're ignoring it, and I tell everybody in a safe way because it's scary. It is a scary place to walk. And I went to school at 17th and Girard in the 1980s. It was a challenging neighborhood then. I don't get scared easily walking down the street. There were about 6 of us. I had to leave early, and I was like, Mark, I got to go. And he's like, you can't walk back by yourself. And he's like, I'm like, I know, I don't really want to, but I have another campaign event to go to. And I was nervous. He said, he's like, you can't. He said, while we were walking there were dealers absolutely walking next to us to try to intimidate us. We could see their guns and their, on their sides. There's obviously people under the cycle of addiction there. There's trash everywhere. There was burned down buildings from the riots, and it was a scary.
It's where my office is.
Thing. Oh, is that right?
My office is right there. Right off
Wow.
where the Rena Center is. I used to be able to walk out my office door and see the lights for the Rena Center. I mean, I am over there on a daily right now. We're implementing a 13,000 square foot community garden to help the residents over there have a place to learn about eliminating food deserts and a place of healing, a beautification side because of all the trauma going on. So hearing this take from you and what you're saying, it's so like in my head, I'm like, no, it's not like that. No, it's not like that because I'm embedded. I'm in that community. That's where I'm at. So to hear this and hearing you as and I don't like to use the word outsider, but an outsider to the community, it's disheartening because it's so much more over there than that. It's so much more than what is seen. I walk along those people who are dealing drugs. I've some of them even take Narcan from us. To use. Which and who are we to going to discriminate to give them Narcan if they're going to use it?
If they're going to save someone, then
if they're going to save a life, they're saving a life. However, I also think that the mindset of people because of what they know about Kensington or what they've heard about Kensington puts them into that place of I'm not walking back by myself.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. So hearing this to me is pretty interesting. So now coming from somebody who's running for an elected office for, how would you describe Kensington to constituents? How would you?
There was trash on every corner. There's needles. You're stepping over needles, and you're watching children walking through this, and it's disheartening. It makes me cry because I have young daughters who I couldn't imagine living in a community and having to step over needles. Sometimes having to walk around a person who is lying on the ground again because they're in the cycle of addiction and they're just lying there in the middle of the sidewalk. It's scary.
So then my question then is, and you don't have an answer for this, of course, but I'm hoping to pique your brain a little bit there. My question is, you've seen what's happening. You've seen the syringes laying around, and they're not just one or two. There's a bunch scattered. They're very common. You see those who are most vulnerable in their most vulnerable state, whether it's if they're in active use at that point in time, or if it's a mental health or whatever. Why is it still going on?
That's a good question. Is it the supply that just keeps coming in?
Well, I mean, let's face it. We know it's an open air drug trade. We know it's one of the largest in the country. But once again, why is it still going on? Why do we have those over in City Hall, the higher ups, still sitting there holding damn meetings on the resilient program every month about what we're going to do and giving us the same lip service each month. But yet people are still dying over there. People are still being forced out of their homes. People are still living the streets. You can go into Rittenhouse Square, and you can even go into Logan as well, Square, and you can see big belly trash compactors with Gary Barbera on the side of it on every corner. You go into Kensington, you see one wired basket chained up to a pole every 4 blocks.
Sure. No, and look, part of it is going to be money. You got to get money into the community, and you got to get the people into rehab. How do you do that? I don't know that answer. And there are some controversial kind of thoughts processes on that. Safe injection sites are one of them, and I am opposed to them. And again, I'm not an expert, but I don't see how normalizing drug use or enabling a drug user by giving them a safe place to inject is the way to do it. And I've read the studies. People said, well, have you ever read a study? I've read every one that I've been able to find. And those studies are oftentimes, or always, they're by people who want safe injection sites. So,
yeah, of course, and me sitting here, I'm biting my lip because, of course, I am
Absolutely.
pro,
and we can have a conversation without
this could be a whole nother, this could be a whole nother show too, where we could, just, go back and forth and talk about it. And I can understand because I understand why some people are saying it, and you use the word, it's, enabling them. And I think that's where a lot of people have to look at it. These places are not going to be enabling them. They're going to be places that can potentially save a life. They're places where they could potentially get counseling, to find places to get into recovery. I mean, there is a trickle down of what can happen behind closed doors. A lot of people look at it as, oh, you're enabling somebody to use drugs. They're going to use those drugs whether that is there or not. They're still doing it.
Sure.
What they're doing is they're providing a safe place for them to do it with the potential of not losing their life. Because if not, and they're on the streets and an overdose happens, one of us has to be walking by, or somebody on the street has to have Narcan, or forget it, So I think that's a thing too. Do I understand what you're saying? Absolutely, especially with, people in the community who have children. I understand both sides of it. You have to. I cannot be doing my job as an advocate for what I do if I don't take both sides into an account.
Sure.
If I attack you because you're telling me that we're enabling, and I'm saying to you, you're just a big old ASS, well then, shame on me, So if we can educate each other and we can talk about these issues like we are now, can you imagine having a room full of us talking about this? That'd be amazing.
Now, one of the, and I'll ask you the question because you are more of an expert than I, but I've read these studies, and never once have I read a study that said, okay, these are X percent of people, 5% of people who come into a safe injection site, 6 months, a year, whatever the case may be, are on the path to recovery a year later. I've never seen that study, and you're not required when you go in to get counseling. So maybe some people would be a little more enthusiastic about it or okay with it if there was counseling that was required, or if it was in an area that, in a hospital setting where the people who do go in and safely inject cannot walk out until they're not high anymore. And it's going to have a little bit of a buffer between just walking out on the street. Because to a lot of people who have children, I would fight a tooth and nail to come to my community. And people say, well, Kensington's already an open drug market, so why not have it there? But I would say, if I don't want it in my community, I can't say, okay, it's okay for Kensington, even if it is already what you call, what you say it's an open drug market.
Well, that's the NIMBYism. Nobody wants it in their backyard, but everybody has to open their eyes and realize that it's already in your backyard. I don't care if you live in Logan. Sure. I don't care if you live in Rittenhouse. You know how many syringes I find?
Oh, absolutely. Logan Square absolutely has them.
Little blue bags all over the place. I mean, I see them. And like I said, this could be a whole show in itself. So it's really cool to hear this. I will tell you, though, that day, though, Drew, when I looked up and I saw you at Esperanza, in my mind, and I wanted to, I mentally, I thought I texted you, or I probably yelled your name a few times too, and just couldn't hear me, because I did think I was doing it, but I didn't want to be like that, Drew,
sure.
But to see something like that, to see, somebody who's running for an elective office, not just a local elected office, you're running for a state,
sure.
in our local, politics, but that meant a lot to me. as an advocate. Even though I know you don't really believe in a lot what we stand for,
Sure.
it meant a lot to me that you were out there opening your eyes and taking this all
Sure.
in. So I applaud you for that,
Oh,
man.
thank you. And
I
look,
don't
it's-
see that happen a lot.
The same goal is there. We want to help people who are on the cycle of addiction. I believe it's a disease, but it's the path to get there. And we don't. It's obviously still a problem, so we haven't found the solution yet. So we got to keep looking for that solution. And
Absolutely, it's a scary one. So well, and because we don't have a ton of time left, but like let's get back to to your candidacy.
Sure.
Let's talk about this. Where can people find out information on Drew Murray?
So it's my website is murrayforphl.com. Facebook is a big place to go.
Is it the word 4 or is it the letter or the number 4?
You're right. That's a good point. It is the number 4. So Murray, Murray, the number 4, and then PHL, short for Philadelphia.
.com.
.com. You can go to Facebook. It's tough. Look, we're on the COVID-19. It's tough. I'm not going out and knocking on doors. I literally hang door knockers. I don't knock on the door at all. I just hang the door knocker and keep walking. So hopefully and in Center City, half the people live in apartment buildings, so you
Right.
can't even knock on half the doors anyway. But Facebook's a good way to find out about me. Because you'll see my views. I'll post. I post on average maybe once a day. Sometimes, like yesterday, I posted 3 times. The
I
day
read 'em.
before, the day before I didn't post at all. So you'll see that. You'll see what I believe in and some of the problems that I have with a lot of our elected officials in Philadelphia. We could do a whole show on our DA Larry Krasner.
Oh, I didn't even want to bring that name up. All of a sudden, can I just tell you, I just got this juice is actually not too bad. You said that, I got a sour taste in my mouth. But, and I pulled it up here. It's Drew Murray for State Rep of 182nd Legislative District on Facebook. Yes, you are very active. You have great views. You have great attitude towards it. It definitely shows that you love our city.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. I love it. I've lived here for 15 years, and I've lived in the area. I grew up in Villanova, so I've been in the area my entire life.
Well, I love the fact that you were able to brave this storm, come in today, sit with me. I welcome you back. Let's make sure we do this again because there's not enough time in an hour for us to get through everything.
No, I'd say we could do a show on Larry Krasner. We could do a show on safe injection sites. We can do a show on there's probably 10 shows we could say we could do just on a single topic.
Well, and I bet you that we're going to probably have all those shows then. Let's do them.
No, hey, it's during COVID-19, it's hard to find guests. I mean, it's let alone do it on Zoom or come into the studio. It's not an easy thing to do, and you're easy, right? I mean, this flew by.
So I've been
almost
told.
done.
So I've been told. But speaking of that, Drew, I appreciate this so much, and I even appreciate Dylan, who is our man, in the sound booth, who keeps us on track at each time, and he's even telling me right now I'm like a minute over. So with that being said, everybody, Drew, thank you so much for coming in today.
All right, thanks, Britt.
Best of luck with the election.
Thank you so much.
I have a good feeling about this for you. And everybody else out there, check out Drew Murray, and remember, whatever it is you stand for, people, be a voice. This is Britt Carpenter on USLA Radio. Have a great rest of your day.